Welcome to the I Am Power podcast, where we hear inspirational stories and then we turn that into art that reminds us to be great. Each week, we dive deep into the story of a special person who discovered their power against all odds. All of the inspiration from each story is then memorialized into a painting that can be purchased in limited print quantities. This podcast is for anyone who is seeking to get out of their own way and step into their life's potential and well-deserved happiness. Let's listen in.
Embracing my mistakes and embracing who we are as women, as powerful beings, and making sure that we are aware that we're worthy of love and belonging. And the moment we really get that is when we start to attract that.
So Tamika, thank you so much for being on today. I'm super excited to have you on and talk to you about your incredible story. I just like to give my viewers a little bit of an idea of like how we know each other or where I found you. I actually met you on one of my husband's video shoots that he was doing, and we instantly connected. And I thought you were such an amazing person. Like I knew immediately, like I have got to know this girl some more. So I'm so excited to have you on today. So just tell our viewers, introduce yourself. Tell us who this Tamika is.
Well, can I say how I met you?
Yes.
Before I got to meet you in person?
Yes.
I run, I'm Tamika Wells and I run Honeybee Grocery Delivery, and I'm also a public speaker, poet, and author. And so prior to that, though, as I'm working on my social media piece with the Honeybee Grocery Delivery business, I see this amazing woman painting with a full belly of a baby. And she is just hot and she's like doing her thing and she makes it look so easy. And I was like, yes, woman, mother, birthing power. It was like, sounds like, and then when I actually met you in person and you were so cool, and then I got to actually meet Atlas, your baby, it was like, yeah, so it just is really inspiring.
Oh, you're so sweet. You're like making me blush over here. Like I appreciate that
she
so
was
much.
Like, I am the mama with the brush.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you so much. Yes, but I'm so glad that like I finally got to meet you in person. I think you're incredible. And yeah, so I think you have an amazing story. Dylan told me a little bit about it, but I told him, I was like, don't tell me too much because I want to hear it from her. And so, yeah, so tell us about yourself.
Well, I mean, I'll start. I was the product of a single parent household. My mom raised me. My dad was a Vietnam vet that when he came back from the war, he just had addicted to so many different things that he just wasn't able to really be present. I mean, there's times where he's nodding off, I guess, from maybe heroin or something like that. And in the middle of the night, I'm out in the streets with my dad, nodding off in a loading dock somewhere. And, a guy wants to, quote unquote, take me home to his wife and kids. And I'm like 3 or 4. I'm like, yeah, kids, let's go. And my dad is like tugging with one arm and the man is pulling me with another at 3 or 4 years old. And looking back at that, I mean, as a kid, it's like, yeah, I'm going to hang out with kids. But my dad might have been high, or he might have been on a poor track in life, but he didn't let me go. He didn't let me go. So when we, people look at, oh, well, my dad wasn't there, my mom didn't do this or do that. I was able recently, especially in doing some therapy and soul searching and writing, to look at my story from a different perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, single mom. My mom was a single mom. I became a single mom. Then she was bipolar schizophrenic. So I'm raising my son at the same time while in and out of the hospital with my mom. And then she finally passed when he was 7 and I was 27. So it's just been a interesting road of being a single parent and parenting the parent. And, and then having a family that says, well, you didn't have an abortion like we recommended you should, so sucks for you, figure it out with you and your child.
Wow.
So it started off in an apartment, and while I was in college, trying to finish college with a baby, $400 in cash assistance from the state of Connecticut, and my rent was $100. And then trying to figure all that out by myself, hour and a half away from family. And it just, it really made me who I am today, a more compassionate, um, open-minded person, that I'm not just like, everybody needs to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. I mean, what if they don't have shoes?
Exactly. Yes. I'm so glad that you said that because that's probably one of the one comments that is like my least favorite when it comes to judging other people's situations and circumstances. Like you don't know, like you said, what if they don't have shoes? Like what you don't know what their situations are. And I am thankful that you were able to get help because I can only begin to imagine what it was like raising a child on your own.
Yeah. I mean, we made it. I mean, he's 21 now, in the U.S. military, studying to be a nurse, a medic.
That's
He
amazing.
had a bumpy road to get there from the time he left the house at 2019 or 19 years old to now. But, he did say the other night when I talked to him, thank you for making me the man that I am. So
Oh, that's so nice that like
it
that
took 2 years to get
I know.
that.
But hearing that you're like, "Oh my gosh, yes, I did it. I was able to do it." That's incredible. One thing that Dylan told me was that you were able to put him through a private school on your own too as a single mom, which I think is amazing in itself. I don't know if anybody's ever like priced private school before, but it's not cheap. And then the fact that you were able to do that as a single parent, like that's phenomenal, and able to give him the education that you wanted him to have. That's incredible.
I mean, when the stuff going on at the school scares the ish out of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can pull up the articles from the Greensboro paper and show what was going on in his school at that time. One of his bullies on the bus went into the Food Lion in Greensboro and shot the security guard point blank in the head and took his
Wow.
firearm. And then another kid was playing chicken with the school bus and hit the school bus head on, and one of the kids ejected from the car and died.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it was like lean on me, welcome to the jungle.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And I was just like, oh, we got to do something.
Yeah, this is not what we're gonna do.
And not just that, but we come from Connecticut. We moved down here when he was 10, and he had a school system up there that they looked at the whole child. He had a in-house psychologist that did games with the boys and taught them choices, and they were very interactive with the kids. They saw a gift in them. That he was 6 years old on the stage storytelling, reading a Nancy the Spider from the top of his head, and he was reading it enunciated with the accents that I do when I read to him at night. He was doing the Spanish accent, the Jamaican
Yeah.
accent at 6 years old on the Longworth Theater stage. And he came from that kind of positive educational background to Alamance County, where they're like, you're just a blank and we're going to treat you like this. And the only thing you're good for is being on our football team. You're in, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that they didn't like me because I know my rights. I studied the First Amendment and stuff like that. So I was very active, more than they would like me to be, not in an angry way, but just asking questions. And when I didn't like what I was hearing, writing letters to the board, the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the daggone president.
Yeah.
Just like, you're not going to tear my child's self-esteem down because of who you think he should be.
That's so
So,
incredible that you recognize that you had a voice and you're like, I'm going to use it because, I am my child's voice and I have to step into that role even if it makes me uncomfortable, which I'm sure you were just like, you have such a powerful um exudant, I don't know what the proper word, like your aura about you is just incredible. So I'm sure that was probably, it was easier for you because you knew the facts. However, coming from where you were coming from, like, I'm trying to think of the words that I'm trying to use, like not
yeah.
the territory, but just the community that you were used to as to where it is now. Like, I'm sure that it can be a little intimidating to step forward and speak up for yourself and speak up for your child. But the fact that you did that, that's amazing.
It was hard because when we moved down here, I had no car. I was back at square one, just pretty much like when he was a baby. So it was food stamps, it was Section 8 rent. Thank goodness the rent was cheaper than $100 when I first got down here. No job. I just wanted a better life for him, and I felt like God had told us to come down here, and because up there, even though they had the great schools, there was about 1,000 shootings in the city of New Haven by the month of July, never mind the whole entire year. And so it's just like, I don't want him caught up in drugs. I don't want him caught up in the school to jail pipeline. And I was just determined that, they're not going to get my son, like they're not going to murder him in the streets,
Right.
and they're not going to incarcerate him for the rest of his life. And so we started from scratch. And so it was kind of, and it's not as the clear school system is not as clear as up there and as transparent. They kind of make the rules as they go. And I remember he was in middle school one time being in trouble for something silly, and the secretary happened to be African American. And I said, "Is this the trend that the black kids keep?" She said, "Honey," and then the other ones just get away with murder. I said, "Oh," because I had no idea. And then I was married for a little while when I first moved down here, and he was just like, I was walking down the street and they called me in the Food Lion parking lot. This place is racist, and I was like clueless because we come from the dream. I have the dream. Martin Luther King. My son went to school. His first grade classes were like Egyptians, Ghanaians, Black, white, Puerto Rican. So my son didn't know when they called him a monkey or chocolate chip what they meant, you know?
Oh yeah, so he wasn't even really taking it as like as a bad thing because he's not used to that kind of language, right?
No. And it was the girls that lived in the neighborhood. The kids would come to my house and they sit around and eat snacks and talk, where I would find all this stuff out. Like a kid went to Mexico to visit family, and a teacher said, "Don't you bring that swine flu back when you come." You
Are
know,
you kidding?
ignorant,
This Oh my God.
ignorant.
And this is in North Carolina that you're experiencing this?
Mebane, North Carolina, Allen, North Carolina.
Wow.
hmm
That's
So we
and
migrated from there to Greensboro to High Point, where he went to school at Westland, and I came to Winston when I started the grocery delivery business. But it was just like unbelievable the level of ignorance that you experience when you're of a different shade than everybody else.
right. And just so that everybody knows, like we're talking about what year are we talking about when we're saying we're experiencing it? Because when you hear about these racial things that happen to these children, you are assuming that it's happened in like the 70s or the 80s. Like that's not what you're experiencing. Like this is real life, real, our time that things like this are going on, and you're having to experience and then explain to your child how to handle these situations. And you would just think that in the day and time and that that we should be moving forward. I mean, I do think that we're getting there, but we're not, like, we have a long ways to go. But the fact, I just couldn't even begin to imagine um having to talk to my child about that and explain that to my child.
We moved to North Carolina in 2010. And so a lot of this started unfolding in 2011, 2012. And we moved to Greensboro 2013. So the car accidents and things that happened in Greensboro from were like maybe 2013 to 2016 or so. And then we were in High Point, and he went to Wesleyan Christian Academy. And I told him, "Honey, everything that's in the garage isn't always a car, just like everything in church is not always a Christian. So
Right.
go back the background and the things that you learned or I've taught you at home and you've seen from other believers, and don't assume that because you're at a Christian school that um, can believe everything and the way they do things." And then what we saw with last year, sometimes I want to go back to Wesley and say, "So you want to rethink some of that stuff you said to me or to my son, or
Yeah.
were we really like imagining these microaggressions that we were experiencing, and how are you all going to work on your diversity now?" So it was an interesting experience, but ultimately I told my son, I was like, "You could deal with the gang violence and the bullying and the things that were going on in public school in Greensboro, or you can deal with the microaggressions and the undercurrent stuff that they had going on, or the great white hope of well, this kid is perfect and doesn't do anything wrong, so they're the best Christian, versus we don't know if your mom can pray, but then when she comes to mom's in prayer, we want her to pray for all of us because oh snap, she can pray. You know what I mean? And it was like, surprise, darling. Do you
Oh
think
my
that
god.
he just happened to get into private school, single mom, no child support? Or do you think I got some strings up there? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I was like,
exactly.
surprise, surprise, darling. Yes, yes, you tick me off. I still will cuss my son out, but Jesus saves, you know. He's a
Yeah.
cussed, you know what I'm saying? And it's a lot of crap we're dealing with out here. So
Oh my
if
goodness.
that's all I'm doing after my backstory and my mom having bipolar schizophrenia and I'm still in my right mind, hallelujah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to I do want to touch really quick on like you're telling me this story and then it just halfway through it clicks with me that you're saying that this is a Christian academy that you're experiencing this microaggression is the word I think you used.
That's a kind word,
Um
yeah.
yeah, so do you think that how do you think is a good way to I don't like is it better now you think or do you think that there's still some I just it's blowing my mind that this was an issue and like you said you're having to pick okay do we go to a public school and suffer maybe in the education department and in the violence department or do I go over here and just kind of have to bite my tongue for a little while like what do you think could be done in that system that would prevent another child experiencing something like that.
I think the church in general realizing that they're implicit in racism and acknowledging that they have a problem. Hopefully they did after last year. My heart's desire, with my businesses is to one day go back to Wesleyan and have a scholarship to pay for the portion of the tuition that the scholarships didn't cover because my portion after scholarships was $736 a month and my
Wow.
rent was like 750 in High Point. So um there are parents and people that just can't swing it. I just happened to, walk into a miracle in the sense of how the business started and everything. And I was still working corporate Wells Fargo at the same time. And I think it really put a strain on my son and I's relationship because we spent a lot of time together until I had to work so much, but I was doing it for him to have better. Um, but I think that what I would do if I had a scholarship like that is also have like a offsite club or space where children who are students who go to Wesleyan based on scholarship and the funding from the scholarships have a place to defrag, a safe place where they can talk about what they experience and realize that they're normal and hopefully pray for and wish well on those kids who are ignorant and deceived because their parents might be or what
Right.
they're watching on TV or the internet or whatever. And then when they go back to their classes and they have to conform to a certain standard, um, they, how can I put it? Their being and who they're created to be is not completely tore down and assimilated into a Eurocentric view of prosperity, because they're looking at the money and the parents have businesses and all this, some big name businesses around the area. And then they're also looking at their view of God and religion from a Eurocentric, because all these private schools started in 1970, 71 when the schools were integrated, desegregated. So they went and made these private schools to help their kids avoid people like us.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, the population is primarily white. I'm assuming in these schools.
And then they kind of assume that if you're of color, it's because you're playing a sport or you're on a scholarship or something like that. And some of these private schools, because I network in the chambers and stuff with other private schools and they don't function that way. But I remember saying to my son one time, my son won the state championship after being cheated out of it the year before out in Cary. And so he finally got the championship he well deserved in his second junior year. And the next Monday, because I was behind on my payments, the financial director emailed me and said, "Congratulations on your son's national championship. When are you going to catch up on your payments?"
Oh my goodness.
And I told my son at one point, because I volunteered for something and she didn't even speak to me when I was there at the tables. And I told my son, I said, these people treat me like ish. And he says, "Well,
Mhm.
Mom, how do you think they treat me? I go to school with their kids."
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So,
And yeah, I mean it's so unfortunate because you think that you already know that a lot of it is prevalent. Racism is prevalent in public schools, probably more, maybe more. I don't know. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, like maybe more so in county schools. And then you think that you can, okay, I'm going to take my kid out of these places that where this is the norm and
mhm.
try to go to a private school where I think that my kid's going to get equality and they're not getting equality. I'm getting treated a certain way, my child's being treated a certain way, and then on top of it, you throw it as a Christian school. It makes it even more eye-opening to me and sad. So yeah, there's definitely a hole and a lot more. There's a lot more that needs to be done.
And it ticks me off because I love Jesus, and what I read about him is not what I'm seeing out here in America. I call it the American gospel,
Yeah.
and it's not doesn't match, because you know somebody by how you treat others, especially those who are different from you and those who you can't make any money off of or get anything from.
Right.
And so I hope that last year has really woken up a lot of these so-called Christian schools and churches and stuff. And hopefully, they're seeing that there needs to be a better way. And I have met some places and institutions like that, and where they draw on the open, honest candor and conversations like this because they want to grow, they want to change, and they want to be more impactful in the community.
Right. That's, yeah, definitely. There's a lot that needs to be done. And like you said, we all we can do is just hope that there's going to be some changes made, and then we ourselves have to be those people that are willing to make that change
Mhm.
and set the foundation for the generations below us, because we can't really, we can try to educate the generations above us, but the I think the biggest ticket is to just teaching our children understanding and teaching them what is right and what is wrong.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a lot to unpack. But I wanted to talk about your childhood. So you mentioned mental illness with your father, and your mother, or
My dad was on as an alcoholic and a drug addict, and my mom was bipolar schizophrenia, and she had her first nervous breakdown when I was about 13. But she had been hearing voices since as long as I can remember, like maybe 3 or 4 years old.
wow.
Yeah.
So tell me how that was growing up. And then the realization that there was something that was wrong. Did you ever feel like, I hear stories of children having troubled childhoods because of unfortunate events with their parents or circumstances with their parents and how it affected them. Do you feel like that affected you out at all as a child?
Absolutely, because I was the only child. So her problems are hallucinated voices and issues with the neighbors segregated me away from my neighbors' kids. It wasn't like I stayed out of a child's or adult's business or problems. If my mom was calling the cops on the neighbors for something, or they're calling the cops on her because of the dog or whatever, then that meant I couldn't go over Willie and Jamiris's house and Damaris's house anymore and play with Carly and Katie. And I'm the only child. And
Yeah.
they used to come to my house and play with my stuff because I, used to have big Christmases and things like that. And thank God for like Facebook and stuff now, because Madi, Jody, and Willie, we're all friends now, on
Yeah.
Facebook. And
Aw.
I got to go down to Clearwater where they live now and visit them someday. But, before I moved, I saw them before I moved down here, and we kind of had a conversation with her dad, and she and just explained like my mom was having these issues. It wasn't diagnosed at that time, but it was really rough growing up like that. And I'm sorry. And the dad just kind of, he's such a sweetheart. He just kind of changed the subject. Like basically that was a past. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
We're family. So that was good, but it was really hard as a kid, because then even that was one side of of our house. The other side, she would say those neighbors were doing stuff, or she was hearing voices and stuff. And they had a granddaughter named Portia that I used to play with, and couldn't really play with or interact with Portia because my mom's, hallucinations and imaginations that they were saying or doing stuff to harass her.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah.
And you said it was untreated. So was she able to get help later on in life with that?
She had her first nervous breakdown when I was 13. And, you know, I kind of have these great listening and counseling skills because of it, because I had to coach and counsel my mom into an ambulance, because if she could say who the president was and the date and the year, they can't take her on her without her permission. And so I had to coach and counsel and coax her into a ambulance to get the help that she needed. And then later on, when I was like 17 and no license, no insurance, I'd drive her to the hospital and stuff like that. So I grew up quick.
Wow. How do you think that that has affected you as a parent, dealing with those certain situations and events in your life? Do you think that, how do you think that's helped you be the parent that you are today?
I did a lot of reading when I was pregnant with my son. Um, because kids don't come with instruction manuals. So I did a lot of reading on what to expect when expecting, and single mamahood, single mama guide for single mothers, black mothers, and stuff
Yeah.
like that. The only thing I didn't listen to in that book was wake up at 5 a.m. and exercise. She's like, get up early
I
before
don't know
your
about
kids
that
and
one.
take. Yeah, now I'm doing it now though, which is really funny. But she was right because I gained like massive weight after. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was like all that Wendy's and McDonald's and stuff. But
Oh man.
but yeah, so it made me very aware. And I used to tell my son when he started experiencing like anger and depression and stuff in his teen years, I said, dude, talk to a counselor, pick the counselor, you talk to a counselor. I don't care if you tell them I'm a maniac or I cuss at you when I'm pissed off or I threw something at you at one point. Get it out your system. I really felt like my mom just stored up a lot of hurt. And I feel like when I did study was it sociology in college and stuff like that, and I saw the symptoms of people of incest or rape, I really feel like she experienced that somewhere in her life or her childhood, and she just internalized everything, and it manifested as that sickness. I'm not saying that it can't be, hereditary or just happen, but I really I'm a strong believer in opening up, being vulnerable, getting the help you need, expressing to someone in a safe place how you feel, so that that doesn't become a dis-ease on the inside that will mess with your mind and your body.
Yeah, most definitely. It's funny that you say that because um you know, even before I started the podcast, I was very much, wanting to educate myself on trauma and how to handle trauma. And the more people that I talk to that have experienced trauma in their life, like one of their biggest things that they talk about is not internalizing that, not holding on to that, and being able to find a healthy, safe way to release that trauma. And I actually watched a documentary not long ago that talks about when you hold that trauma, and it just made me think about you saying that you think that there could have been some manifestation of your mother's trauma that led to her illness. It talks about how the body holds trauma, and certain types of trauma affect certain parts of your body, and like how important it is to address it, even if you just address it with yourself and just and I know that that's a hard thing for a lot of people who have experienced traumas in their life to, for me, the trauma that I've experienced, I've even said this to my husband before. It's just easier for me to like pack it away and put it away, and because that's the easy thing. And if I don't think about it, then it just, I'm better. But like subconsciously, like it peeks its ugly head, and it's just like, so it's definitely an important thing to handle that.
It is, and I'm glad that I think that's a good outcome or result of 2020 and the pandemic is that people are seeking help more now than ever before, and seeing a therapist and counseling isn't a dirty word like it used to be. It's still a lot
Yes.
of communities that still see it as a stigma or mental illness as a stigma. Or if you go to a therapist or talk to a counselor, you have a problem, like a mental problem. But
Yes.
I do believe I'm really excited to see how we're going to turn around because we're going to get the help that we need.
I know. I'm so glad that you said that. Like 2020 was just, it was, I grew a lot during 2020. And like, it's an unfortunate event that happened. We lost a lot of people because of it. But I'm trying to look at the good in it. And we've had a lot of like things that have happened that have just paved the way for like better tomorrow. And for me, like you said, the destigmatizing of counseling and therapy. I had a family member growing up that would seek therapy, or had to go and see a counselor. Um, and it was we always thought of it as an embarrassing thing. Like I didn't want to tell anybody about this person getting therapy or counseling because I thought that, like you said, something was wrong with them, or it was, and it was a dirty thing. So I'm so glad that now like people are like, yes, I get
Mm-hmm.
therapy. Like, and now it's like, if you don't get therapy, people are like, what? You don't talk to a therapist or you don't talk to a counselor? So like, I love where that's going, because I think that everybody could probably benefit having somebody that's a neutral, unbiased person that you can talk to about the things that you're going through. Like I'm such a huge therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist fan.
Yeah, yeah. I did a lot of reading the last like 5 years, and it's like it's a part of your care regimen. Like you have a primary care physician, you have a dentist, an optometrist. You go get your eyes checked, you get your hearing checked every now and then, and you get your mind checked because this way
Yes.
they can see a pattern or an issue before it becomes a major issue. And January after the insurrection, people started getting a lot more aggressive towards me and my grocery delivery business in the stores. And I had some other things going on with another coaching program I was in, and I started having chest pains. And I was just like, okay, I've got to do something, because I experienced a lot of stuff in the grocery stores. And just about any time the president said something, Proud Boy stand down, stand back. And then you got somebody chasing me down in Walmart parking lot, blocking me in my parking space and feeling like he's the militia and stuff.
Yeah.
And you internalize that because you can't like in a business, it wouldn't be a good look for me to pull out a pistol and act like Yosemite Sam because they expect me to and they want to
Yeah.
incarcerate me or whatever. And so you internalize a lot of that stuff and you want to fight. I'm a warrior type of person anyway. So you want to get back or make people leave you alone and you can't. And so I see a therapist every week since then, since January. And it's the best thing ever. It didn't make my life perfect, but I had an outlet. And a part of undoing shame, which is something I talk about in the poetry and the books that I'm writing in my coaching program, is having a connection where someone not just hears your story, but they empathize with it. Empathy undoes shame. So not everybody is skilled to do that. A lot of times if a person were to share, well, my mom just died, or I just had a miscarriage, or I had a broken engagement, people will respond, oh, well, just pray about it, or get over it, or wow, it's been a year since that person died. Why do you still have their clothes? Or especially if you have a job, a 9 to 5. Yeah, well, you get a week off to bury your parent, which was the whole week of you planning the funeral. Now we need you back on the clock because so and so has to go on their vacation, and you just smile and nod and act like everything's okay. And so having that therapist, that person that can connect and listen and draw things out of you and ask you some really, my therapist asked me some really tough questions. I need that because people see me as strong. So my friends may be a little intimidated to ask me certain questions, but he's not. And I really appreciate that.
That's amazing. That's so amazing. And so you touched on your book, so I want to talk about what you've got going on with that. So, I mean, I just think you're like the I love poetry. Let me just say that first of all. Like, I'm a huge poetry fan. I used to actually dabble in it a little
Good,
bit.
good,
So
good. And
yeah,
I
it's
dabble in
very
painting a little bit, but not like look at
okay.
my I did a poem, like you see those over
Oh
there?
yes, I see
They
it.
go there
Look at
for
you.
one for each poem, right? One like the one up top
Oh,
has to do with my mom, the poem about my mom, and the second one
oh.
has it's called Tidal Wave, and it talks about how the world, how mamas reacted to the George Floyd situation.
Yeah. Oh my God. So you have a poem about that?
Yeah.
I can't wait. So tell me, what prompted you? Like, where did have you? Is this something that you've been wanting to do for a really long time, and now it's just like, okay, I have to do it now because it's like it's there, or like, tell me about this book.
Oh, the poetry, I've been a poet since I was 12 years old, like seventh grade, and I I had a friend from middle school that I came back in contact with on Facebook, and she's like, "You remember you introduced me to Maya Angelou?" I was like, "I did." Oh, I
Oh.
did. Oh, I was like in and out of school at that time, and working at McDonald's at 13, and in the gang and skipping school. So I don't even remember me being
Yeah, you're like,
eloquent or
when did I do
scholarly.
that?
I smart. I was smart. I sure was. I was just too smart on the other end of things. But yeah, so and then having a child, and I wrote like at 17, dealing with depression, and parentified child. Mom, did you take your medicine? You take your medicine, and the outcomes of when she did, and so I wrote a lot then, and then I started painting a little bit because it just seemed like poetry wasn't enough of an outlet. So I needed to open the faucet a little bit more and try something else.
Yes.
So I would just do that just as a form of expression and outlet. And then I had my son, and I wrote some, but raising a child, you kind of just put your gifts to the side, especially when you don't have family support. And, I did spoken word for a while up in Connecticut till about 2008 when my mom died. And then I did a little bit more till 2010. But when we moved down here, no one that knows me in North Carolina knew that I do poetry, but my friends back home in Connecticut do. And so 2019, I was like, he's moved out. I got to do me now.
Yeah.
And then I got in the cycle of building a business and, trying to make sure my ends meet. Because it seems like when you're taking care of a kid, you get the super strength, and then it's just you, and you're like,
How did I do that?
yeah, how did I do that again? It's crazy because it's like we think someone outside of us is always more important than us as a mom, as a woman. So that's
Yeah.
something I kind of talk about too. And so and then when 2020 happened, 2020 was like, oh, all that HE double hockey sticks that I've been through these last 40 years all helped me to survive and to make an impact in 2020. The grief, the lack, the struggle, the economic ups and downs. I was able to adapt and flow through it and have compassion because that was like my whole life. I told somebody in the leadership, Louisville Clemens, I was like, have you ever seen the movie The Pursuit of Happiness? And they were like, oh, yeah, I love that movie. I said, well, that was 2 hours. Try that for 20 years,
Yeah.
21 years. And they were like, oh. Like, you
Yeah.
know,
Thanks for putting that into perspective for me.
yeah. So the poetry is just touching on a lot of those different things, or being a single female, being preyed on instead of prayed for, and prayed on, trying to raise a child, or like, failure in relationships, and trying to figure out what's wrong with me when she's a drug addict, or, not all there sometimes. And this man has loved her for 30 years, and just like embracing my mistakes, and embracing, who we are as women, as powerful beings, and making sure that, we are aware that we're worthy of love and belonging. And the moment we really get that is when we start to attract that.
Oh, you're just giving me cold chills over here. Like I can't wait. So this book of poetry is in essence your life story, kind of, right? In
Kind of,
poetry form, like
kind of.
all the events that you've experienced in your life have like made it a way for you to just kind of put this beautiful, beautiful words onto paper. That's amazing. I can't wait. So, do you have a release date for that yet, or are we still kind of like you're still working on it?
It's still the poetry's still coming. I'm trying to get the coaching program going first, and then the poetry book and there's even some songs in there that are starting to come out, and it's just like you know you've had a baby before where
Yeah.
you're all self conscious about our body, and you know, and then you have a baby, and there's like 10 people in the room, and the most disgusting worst part of you is showing, and they're all right there looking at it, and you're just like when you're all done, you're like, I just gave birth to a human. Screw that. So it's like with 2020, we've seen the ugliest parts of humanity and some of the most beautiful things. And it's like, I survived this. So I don't care if someone doesn't like my voice or it's pitchy or, you know, the sonnet or the whatever isn't. This is going to minister to somebody. These poems, these songs are going to find the tribe that needs to hear it somewhere. And then screw the naysayers because you probably aren't doing what you're supposed to do anyway.
Right. That's amazing. I can't wait for this to come out. Like I know that it's gonna just be so impactful on so many people. I can't wait. So I do wanna so I just kinda wanna like oh my gosh, you're so and like I just love you. Like I just
I
want to
love
say
you
that.
too. I love you
So
too.
so you had so you've went from a pretty rough upbringing, not necessarily like in the way that your parents raised you, but just circumstances that you were a part of. I know you said that with your father, with the addiction, and then the mental illness with your mother, and then you mentioned there for a second. I didn't want to talk about it until you mentioned it, but you mentioned that you were in a gang that
Yeah.
you kind of got into that. Can you tell me about that experience and like how you what you've learned from that?
Yeah. Being an only child, and you know, I grew up in a community where you bullied or be bullied, and so I didn't have my cousins and Bebe and Tay Tay and my big brother and my big sister gonna get you if you mess with me. You know, my fists had to do enough, and if they didn't, then what? And so for to have that need for love and belonging, you know, and protection, I joined the gang, and um it was just like I was already when I look back on it, I was already marked for God. So it was like I was hanging out in the enemy's camp, and I'm like, I'm fit in, right? I'm cool, just like y'all. I know the handshake, and they're like, imposter, like you are so. I don't know what you are, but we don't like you. And
Yeah,
it
like
was
the goodness inside of you is like radiating out, and
yeah,
we
it
don't
was like,
understand it.
and then I'm like trying to hide like a little glowworm in the dark with the bats, you know? And
Oh
it's
my
like,
god.
I fit in. I promise you I do. And they're like, oh no, you're making us itch. You're screwing up our stuff. You talk too much, you know? And they jumped me. I got jumped twice. They made up lies about me. And my best friend, who I got in the gang, got with the leader of the female gang and then betrayed me and created a story to get me jumped or disciplined. And I let them discipline me at first because you're supposed to walk through this line and the girls are just supposed to punch you. Well, they didn't stay civilized like that. You might have got through about 3 people on each side and then they just start jumping you and stomping you and things like that.
Mm.
And so that was round one. And I'm like walking home. No, actually that was round one. And I went home and I forgot I told my mom I fell or dog got me or whatever. And then I went to a meeting again, like an idiot. But it's like this is what kids do to wanna fit in or make that pseudo family. Like I told you, my family they didn't see me. You know what I'm saying? Everybody kind of had their own things going on, and they definitely one poem I talk about family. They didn't step in and support me with my mom's disease like I feel like they should have. I carried a lot of that adult weight that they should have through her whole life, and so even as a young person. they weren't, really there. They had a little infrastructure better. I was eating shrimp and stuff like that as a child of a single parent, and lived in a house for a while and stuff like that. But it was the emotional support that wasn't really there. They didn't get me. So I went back to this meeting again, and they weren't there. I knocked on the door. They were late, or I knocked on the door. Nobody came. Finally, I go back to the bus stop, and here comes everybody from down to the meeting. So I guess they were there. They just didn't open the door. And they said, "Oh yeah, so we heard that you did XYZ. I can't remember what it was, or you were late, or you didn't show up, you didn't pay your dues." And there's other people that didn't do the same thing, And they're like, "So we gotta jump you again." And this time, just like my friends, taught me, you grab one and beat the brakes out of the one or two that you can get. And so
Yeah.
that's what I did. It was like 5 to 10 girls on me, but I did what I had to do to at least one of them. And so I escaped that, and this lady in a Lexus picked me up, and she's like, "I saw them jumping you." She brought me home. She's like, "You don't have to put up with that." Next thing you know, they send a hit out on my life because I'm a social butterfly, and I'm talking to
Yeah.
someone of another gang. And then that other person tells the other person that I said when I'm not supposed to tell the business of that gang. And we're all under the age of 16. These are the junior gangs of the bigger gangs.
Right.
And so they say, I'm walking home and I see a guy who I know from the gang who's not always at the meetings. And I don't know if he pays his dues, but they sent him to come get me. And I, went from the corner store. I kind of peeked out and looked, and I did like this whole, like, I don't know if you want to call it Jungle Book or David in the Wilderness thing, but I'm like, in the store and looking out, and they're still out there. So I called my mom from the store to come get me. No, I go around the corner to my house, and I see they're following me. I get in the house real quick. I go and I change my clothes. I put a hat on to look like a dude, and I go back outside to see if I'm really experiencing what I think I am. And as soon as I get to the corner, they're right behind me. So I get to the store and I call my mom and I have her come pick me up. And I'm like, "Okay, mom, I'm in a gang. This is what's going on. I need to hide out because they're trying to kill me." And
Oh
I
my
had to
gosh.
stay with a 23-year-old in her apartment. I'm 13. I had to stay with a 23-year-old in her apartment for about a month or two until things died down. Then my mom had her first nervous breakdown. And then I moved to Florida for 4 years to kind of protect my life against all that stuff. So,
Wow.
yeah. And then, I mean, if I hadn't gone to Florida, I wouldn't be who I am today because that's where I got back into school, back into education, loving life again because Bridgeport, Connecticut for me was a dead end, and all my friends that are still there to this day, they're not happy. Most of them, they say, "I want to leave, I want to move, I just can't." And I was actually afforded that opportunity to go and have a new life because of that gang situation. But I wouldn't be, and my son wouldn't be who we are today without that.
Absolutely. Like oh my gosh, that's an incredible story. And I'm sure that that experience is what like prompted you to like went with the school situation with your son is you're like, I know, like, cause I've been there. I've been in that situation and in that environment, and I do not want that for my child. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that he does not get subjected to that.
I'm going to try to stay connected with him. I'm going to try to listen to him. I'm going to try to be aware of what's going on. So when the kid's name came in the paper that he had shot the security officer, I knew his name because my son told me about the kids on the bus. And I'm at the school and telling the principal what's going on. They go, "I don't know what you're talking about." Okay, when he bust somebody's in the mouth and he sent them to the hospital, I was like, I took him out for steak dinner and I said, "Snitches get stitches." No, no, I said snitch. I put on Facebook, "Snitches give stitches."
Oh yeah.
Because
Oh
we
my
did all
goodness.
we could do. We talked to you, we prayed, we did everything we could do to avoid the situation, and the administration and the school police didn't want to do it. So my son took care of, well, like, again, if they're all ganging up on you, take one out. And he did.
Yeah.
And they didn't mess with him for the rest of the year, but he still wasn't going back to that school that next year. But
Right.
it's just as a single parent and just trying to do the right things, it's a tough call, but all I could do was the best I could.
Yeah, and I think that you did an amazing job. You have such an incredible story, and just to kind of give the listeners an idea, like you've had those situations in your life, and here we are now. You're an entrepreneur. You have your own business, and you're writing a book, and just you put your child through private school, and just if that's not a testament as to like you can do anything you set your mind to, like I don't know what is.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. So I have a few questions that I like to ask all of my guests. Just want to I want to jump right into those because I feel like these are going to be really empowering and inspirational. If you could remember, how would you describe your ambitions as a child and how you saw yourself and what you were capable of as a person?
Oh, well, I used to watch Double Dare, so I wanted to be an astronaut. And I wanted to be a
I love
scientist.
that.
Yeah, I wanted to be a scientist and travel the world. And then I wanted to be a medicine doctor. I was going, when I was pregnant with my son, I was going to college to be a doctor. And then after he was born, well, I was like, I could be like a naturopathic doctor and travel the world and get these indigenous cures. And then my son will stand up in fifth grade or kindergarten show and tell, but like, my mom's a witch doctor, and we went
Oh
to
my,
Brazil in the Amazon basin, and we swam with the anacondas. And well, it didn't exactly work like that, but that was a dream.
yeah. That's 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 awesome. I always love to hear like what I was that's like my favorite question to ask people is like what do you want to be when you're a kid, because it's always like sometimes you have some of the greatest stories. What would you say was has been your stickiest struggle that has stuck with you through your journey?
Not finding a good man, child. That I don't know what is in the water. We do EFT, emotional freedom techniques, and tapping, and trying to undo some childhood. So that's what I'm working on, because this cycle of things coming off the conveyor belt needs to stop. All these
Yeah.
gorillas and alligators and stuff. I need my acceptable mate. Like Adam found Eve and said, "Whoa, man, I need like a whoa, man." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not like giraffe or a rabbit or like, no, that's not for me. Snake, no,
Yeah.
not for me.
That's so funny. They are out there. It's
You got a
they're
good
hard
one,
to
so
find.
you got a
I
good
do have a
one.
good
So it's
one.
it's coming around. They come,
I can attest. I can attest to you guys that they are out there. You just they are there when you are least expecting it,
Because
and that was
I
how it
want
was
my
for me.
son to see, that what real love and real relationships looks like.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's see. Did you have an aha moment in your journey where you were just like, okay, like I know that I want to be better. I want to do better. I want better for myself, my family. Was it before your son when you realized that you were like, okay, this is what I've got to do to make the rest of my life go up instead of down?
Uh when I had my son, all of those stories I didn't even tell you about. Like I said something about being in a hotel, but they were gonna take. I had my son. He was supposed to go home on Good Friday, and they wanted to take him. The services wanted to take him because I had a fight with my mom the week before I had him. So that was domestic violence. I had the depression and then homelessness because she kicked me out. And my social worker was off that day. So a substitute came in and saw that and said, "Oh, we need to do our job and get this kid away from this crazy 19-year-old or 20-year-old." And that wasn't the case. So I knew when I had him that he was special and going to do great things. I had a tiny inkling that I might be a part of that, or I might be someone special, but my self esteem was so low at that point. But that then finally, about 10, 12 years later, I was like, oh no, I'm a part of this too. And even the more when the successful business came through and being able to help with the pandemic and stuff and not catch COVID or transfer it to anybody, it's like, oh yeah, I am hot. I am. Yeah, I am. I survived this
You're
thing.
like, yeah, absolutely. Like I can do anything. I love it. So we like to talk about stepping into your own power and not thinking of that as a bad thing. How do you think of, or would you describe the power that you have to step into every day?
it's an everyday work. And it's like every time you get solid on that and confident, something comes along to try to knock you off that pedestal. It's like jousting, and you might it's like American Gladiator. You might knock your opponent off, but daggone it, someone comes with a bigger jousting stick every time and you still got to hold your ground. So every day I'm just back into, meditation and affirmations and speaking positivity into my life every day and throughout the day, because it's an everyday uphill battle to own that confidence.
Yes. Yes. I love that. That's amazing. Yeah. I just think it's so important that like people realize that it's an everyday thing. We're growing every day. Being a better person doesn't necessarily happen. I think I can say that it doesn't happen overnight, not necessarily, but like, some things, everything is a work in progress. And I think that that's okay and that we need to normalize that.
Yes, we do. It is normal.
What's the best piece of advice you have ever been given?
It only takes one good parent to raise a child.
I love
You
that.
only need one good parent. That took so much weight off my shoulders.
Yeah, and and that it's okay and that you can do it. And also that to not be, afraid to take the help that's out there for you.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
amazing.
And it takes a village. So accept the healthy village. You don't want
Yeah.
any Chesters or child molesters or, even females speaking negative in your child's life or your life. But that it's okay to enjoy that village helping you out with your child.
Yes, yes, I love that. My last question to you, and it's also one of my favorites. What is the best piece of advice that you would give a younger version of yourself who is in the thick of struggle if you had just a few moments with them?
Outlive the lie. Outlive the lie. Keep going. There's the ugly duckling season, but you will be a swan, and then you'll be a role model and a guidepost for the next ugly duckling. Because if you survive and you're ahead and you're beautiful and you've grown through it and you're transparent to say you weren't, I woke up like this, I
Yeah.
was born this way. Maybe it's Maybelline. No, if you're vulnerable and you're just like, no, this was a struggle, I've been there, and you reach back and you be that light for that person, but you got to live through it. And so I'm very adamant about helping people get through that phase of wanting to commit suicide or wanting to end things, whether they're younger or older, because it's usually the most intense right before the victory. So a lot of times when I felt like giving up on my life or seeing my loved ones who are in heaven instead of dealing with the hell that's here, um, just to look back now, I'm glad I lived through that season.
That is amazing. I love that. I love that so much. I want to thank you so much on behalf of the team here at the I Empower podcast and every person that heard your story and connected with it. After the podcast, I will head straight to my easel and create a painting that the inspiration personally I felt from your story, your amazing story of transformation. And then, of course, if anybody's interested in seeing the process, they can do so on my Instagram. And of course, yes, thank you so much. Like, I'm at a loss for words. Like, you're so amazing. Have an incredible story, and I just cannot wait to see what the future holds for you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been awesome, and I admire your work. And I'm definitely going to tell everybody they need to buy your painting, your piece.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes. So if anybody who personally felt connected with that, with the story, and you want to buy one of those limited edition prints, you can do so. That will all go live when this episode goes live. So yeah, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you. Thank you. And tell your team I said, mwah.
Yeah. Ah.
Y'all are awesome.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. I want to thank my guest again for being on the show and sharing their incredible story of transformation with us. I'm going to link their social medias below so that if you want to give them a follow and encourage them through their journey, you can do so. Also, if you personally felt connected with the story and you would like to purchase one of the prints that goes along with it to help support the podcast, you can do so at jessicajames.com. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at I Empower Club and of of course, like and subscribe so that you don't miss next week's episode of Iron Power. See you then.